Have you heard about this personal and professional podcast?
Coaching in Session
with your host, Michael Rearden.
Andrew, how are you?
Well, nice to see you.
Yes. One of the things I love to have my guests do in the beginning is to kind of introduce themselves to the world, tell them a bit who they are. It could be a little bit of backstory, where you came from. Also, like, talk about some of the talking points that we're going to be getting into so people know what we're going to be talking about for the next 40 minutes or so.
Yeah, I'm ready. I might have picked up that I'm not American. So I grew up in Australia. I now live in far north Queensland, up near the Great Barrier Reef. Grew up in a state of South Australia, a little country town. Father was a landscape painter. And so I grew up drawing and sketching and being around art. A lot of father's friends and my friends were artists. I figured maybe I would become a lawyer. And, I went to law school briefly and then found that I enjoyed drawing and painting a lot more. I studied at the Art Students League of New York, my late teens. And when I was 25, Michael, I made a shocking discovery. Discovered that the happiest people I knew had bigger problems than me. Suddenly I had no excuse. I thought that when my life got easier, I would be happier. But I couldn't argue with the fact that it was often people that had had more challenges. And, maybe they'd been through disasters, or I came across one family whose house had burned down, but they seemed unusually happy. Came across people who had lost jobs or lost loved ones or made it through cancer. Very often those people seem to find more joy and more meaning in life than most people. I had to finally admit that it wasn't what happens to you, but it's how you think about what happens to you. It sent me on a journey trying to figure out how I could think like happy people think. After reading about 200 books and spending a few years studying happy people, I wrote a book called Being Happy. And I wanted to write a book that was more entertaining than a lot of the books I'd read. I wanted to write a book for people who don't like self-help books and for people who often don't like to read. So I filled my book with cartoons and lots of space. I made it Happy feel a little bit more like a magazine, which people are more comfortable reading a magazine than a book. So I thought, let's make a book that is friendly and a book that has pictures to help readers remember the messages. And I went through the same kinds of challenges finding a publisher that many people do. But when Being Happy hit the ground, it took off and eventually sold 3 million copies and continues to sell today. And that was the beginning of a career as an author. So I've written 12 books now. My most recent book is called Bouncing Back. I wanted to look at how it is that resilient people operate. What do resilient people do? And can we isolate it into some things that we can do? Because we're all bouncing back from something. Maybe we're bouncing back from eating too much or spending too much or missing out on a job that we thought was going to be ours, or bouncing back from a relationship that kind of went sour. So that's it in a nutshell. These days, I spend a lot of my time speaking to corporations around the world. So I speak in 30 countries and I draw cartoons on stage when I speak. That makes it fun. But I will sometimes day I might be speaking to Dell or Intel or Motorola. The next day I might be in a prison speaking to prisoners. And the following day I might be speaking to high school students. But focusing on resilience, our happiness is very much a choice that we make. Not always easy, but possible. And so that has been my life for the last 30 years.
And I'm excited to definitely get into it. I love speaking with authors because it's like you are an encyclopedia of wisdom. It's like you have lived it, you have done it, you have spoken about it, you have shared it with the world already. And for people, books especially are something that people think they stop after they're done with schooling. I can't tell you how many individuals, be it children, young teens, even college professionals, that after they're done with their school, they say, okay, I'm done learning. I'm all done with everything, right? I got everything I need. And then they're off to the races. They're off to the real world. And they didn't realize that there's many more battles that they have to understand and learn about. You know, the statistics are, I'm going to get it wrong, but it's like after the age of 30 or after the age of 18, I believe, it's like 33% of people won't read a book or something like that. So that's
That is
astounding.
amazing.
Like, yeah, it's like after 18, it's like, yeah, I'm done reading books. It's like, okay, like what are you doing? And of course, we can look at technology today. Many people will, watch a video or play games on their phone or something. They do something else besides read a book. And I mean, I have books everywhere in this office. Like I have books back there. I got books over here. I got a pile of books over there. I have a guest room full of books on my bookshelf. I have a lot of books in this house. It's always difficult to kind of say, which books am I going to keep? Because you accumulate so many of them. And of course, you can just go to the library, get a book and things like that. I did that when I was younger. My grandmother would take us to the library and we would get books every week. And we were never really good about bringing them back. So we always had to buy them. But, you know, as I matured and I grew up, I became more mature and more responsible, I guess. So all the books are now back at the library if I ever take out a book. But, you know, it was something that I think many people don't appreciate, like the value of a good book or the value of a book that can help instill something within you and help change your life. What's your take on the value of a book?
Firstly, the value of an idea. One idea can change your life. So I read a book with the hope that I will get one idea. I give you an example. It's not failure that crushes us. What hurts most is never having tried. Came across that idea in a book. Suddenly it changed my whole mindset so that I was thinking it doesn't matter if what I do doesn't work. I feel so much better about myself for having tried. When I'm 85 years old, I'm not going to be worrying about the things that didn't work. I'm going to be thinking about the things that I could have done or could have tried but didn't. So in that context, read a book or I listen to an audio book or a podcast like yours with the idea, I just want to take away one idea. Joy for me in writing these books and the reason that I took it from one book to now having written 12 is that there are still a lot of people who do read and they send me emails and they contact me on social media and say, Andrew, your ideas changed my life. And I like to respond always. And I will say, didn't change your life. It's not my ideas. You changed your life. But I'm thrilled that my books were a part of that. So enormously powerful. And most people write books, non-fiction books, with the idea of helping people to navigate a problem so the reader doesn't make the same mistakes. So a book can save us years of mistakes or years of misery. And so just so precious.
Yeah, it's the wisdom aspect, because I like to think of like a book being two things, right? Wisdom and knowledge. Let's say you wrote a book about riding a bike. I can read that book all day long, and when I get on a bike, I'm probably going to fall. I'm going to not do too well, right? It's going to be the failure that helps me learn to ride the bike. Now, of course, I'm going to learn the wisdom there, right? I might have to pay attention, right? Keep both feet on the pedals, right? Make sure I don't jerk the handlebars too much, right? So that's the wisdom aspect. So if you take knowledge and wisdom with experience, you get something amazing. Many people, when it comes to reading books, they typically don't look at the trifecta of everything. They say, okay, let me see how much I can learn, right? The knowledge aspect. And then they kind of let the wisdom go sometimes, or, you know, they don't pay attention to it. Because if you get, let's say, like a classroom of kids, you tell them to read a book and the book is only 10 pages long. And you basically ask each one to write what they read about. Everyone's going to have a different take on what they read, right? It's only 10 pages, right? Some people might focus on the beginning. Some people might focus on the middle. Some people might focus at the end. There's no right answer, but the brain naturally is going to gravitate to things that is almost like glue to it. It's like, wait, this attracts me. It was almost like how you tried to, go to school to be a lawyer. Like, this doesn't feel right for me, So like art was right for me, right? It was something I experienced growing up, and this is a part of me. You incorporate that into all your works today, from whether you do keynote speeches, big corporation, or you do it at a small high school. You do it because it feels good to you, and it feels natural to everyone else because it's natural to you. And I always say, like, when you could be authentic, you can truly reach more people, because, if you just kind of do things as a facade, people can truly tell intentions. It's almost like reading energy. It's like this person doesn't feel authentic. Like, this person doesn't feel real. But when you can be real, when you can, and you can give them resources that is appropriate to their mind or their thinking, or just how people naturally want to be, it's going to be so much more impactful.
Yes, Michael. And along with that, the realization that we don't have to be perfect. Being authentic comes with doing something that we care about, and also enthusiasm. And if we have that care and that enthusiasm, and if we have a good message, then that is enough. And people will forgive us for not being perfect. It took me a while to learn that in my keynote presentations.
Yeah. Going back to book number 1, right? Did you think you would have the impact in, like how many people read your book, and, how many people are out there supporting you and learning from you when you wrote that initial book?
The interesting thing is the first book I wrote never got published. That was a children's book. I sent that to 60 publishers around the world, and then I counted the rejections as they came back. Before long, I guess after about 2 or 3 weeks, I had my first rejection slips. And before long, I had 20 and 30 and 45 and 55 and 58 and 59 and then 60 and 61. Somebody wrote to me twice and said, forget it. So I already knew that it was a challenge to get published. Being happy, I decided I would be a little bit more selective. And so I figured out who were the most likely 17 publishers around the world who were publishing nonfiction in the English language. I wrote to all of those, and I got 17 rejections. Then there's a message here too. Just by chance, I was passing through Singapore, and I had lunch with a friend. And I said to her, do you want to read my manuscript? It's just been rejected by 17 publishers. She said, I've got a neighbor that's a publisher, and I will let him read it. And I thought, yeah, everyone's got a neighbor or an auntie or someone that does something. And this neighbor, yes, and he had his last book, tiny publishing company, published the Vanuatu telephone directory. Tiny little island in the Pacific, knows maybe 40 pages of telephone numbers, but they published Being Happy. And a wife of the husband, she was the editor and she was in magazines. So they understood the value of a simple message with cartoons. So it was this publisher, Media Masters, based in Singapore, that took my books around the world initially and now in 48 languages. So to answer your question, I would have been happy to sell 1,000 copies. I would have been happy just to find a publisher, given how things started out. So I do need to keep pushing.
One of the reasons why I asked the question was because we don't necessarily truly know what impact we're going to have when we have an action that we might be anticipating, like anticipate making. So we have that book, right? We have this idea, there's so many inventors in the world too. And they just keep these ideas under wraps, Sure enough, there's one day someone does something and, you know what they say? They're like, oh, I had that idea. Like it could be for anything. It could be for a platform like TikTok, Instagram, etc., YouTube. All of these, things someone created. And then the ideas for books too. Like, oh yeah, like I had that idea. Many people just, don't take action. Like they don't act upon those ideas. It's almost like, well, I'll let someone else worry about it. This is like a phenomena that's even in our day to day. For example, let's say someone's on the side of the road and they got a flat tire and they're just kind of there, like they don't know how to change a tire. Like you can see, like, I don't know what I'm doing. And maybe you are someone who knows how to change a tire. You might say, well, they probably called for help already. They have roadside assistance coming to help them. They don't need help. You have all these excuses going on in your mind, besides saying, hey, I'm going to pull over and stop and help them. And it's amazing because when you do pull over, or if you do, and you say, hey, is everything okay? They're like, no, like I ran out of gas. And it's like, well, we can go to the gas station and, get you a little gas so you can, get to the gas station and fill up. It's like, oh, appreciate that. And it's almost like we just kind of get so busy with our own life. We're not paying attention to the things that are around us, the people that need us. As you said, early on, like the happiest people have these big, huge problems. And we think our problems are these grandiose things that are anchors and, they're weighing us down so much. And, it's like, how can I help you when I'm trying to help myself? Whereas like, if we just can step out of our own situation, and not saying that we're putting ourselves in other people's shoes consistently, and to the point where it's like, well, it is true, my problems are bigger than yours. Like you're having a competition of who has a bigger problem or who has a rougher life. There lies a idea where it's like, is this a competition of life? Because it seems like everyone's trying to get to happiness, and the current meta or the idea of happiness today is to have big homes and to have a nice car and to wear nice clothes and to have a loving relationship. And it's like, if you don't have that ideal circumstance, happiness is not going to be something that can be yours, because you're always thinking about what could be. So, from you writing all these books and understanding about happiness in general, what would you say is the biggest hurdles that individuals have to face if they want to be more happy in their life?
First one, I think, Michael, is that we need to understand that happiness is a decision. That essentially we say, from today, I'm going to see my life a little differently. I'm going to reflect on my own challenges differently. And when we make a decision to say, I choose to be more grateful from this day onward, then things change. So here's one thing. The next thing that we can do is we say to ourselves, when things go wrong, what is one good thing about this? Because you may have discovered, and I'm sure what our listeners have discovered, is that once you have one negative thought, it leads to another and another and another. Negative thoughts are like rats. The moment we say, hey, I've been bumped off this flight, or someone stole my bicycle, or I didn't get this promotion, had to cancel my vacation, but what is one good thing about this? Then we start to find one good thing. As we find one good thing, we stop that invasion of all the negative thoughts. So that's always a good thing. Making a decision not to complain is critical. We're alluding to that a little bit in terms of seeing things in perspective. Everyone knows that what we think about, we talk about. We think about food, we talk about food. But the reverse is also true. The things that we talk about, we continue to think about, even when we're by ourselves. So if we can choose to not complain about things, then we have a big effect on the thoughts that are happening in our head. Other thing, and you've touched on this in terms of the person on the highway with the flat tire, happy people are kind people. If we can recognize that the kinder we are, the happier we will be, that's helpful. That leads to things like giving people compliments. more that we compliment people, if we say, I want to give 3 compliments today to somebody or 3 different people, then we go about our day looking for good things in people and situations. And the more good we find in the world outside, the more good we find in ourselves. It's just an automatic equation. So that helps us to be happy too.
Very good point. I don't know how it is over where you are, but like in America, depending on where you are, people don't talk to people. So it's just like everyone has their own bubbles, like they live in their own life. It's like, this is my life and I'm going to go do what I got to do and I got to do what I got to do, right? I used to live in Connecticut and it's by New York over there. And the people are like that in the bubble. And when I moved to Texas, let me tell you, the people are so friendly. They're just like I don't care what's going on in my life or in your life. I'm going to say hi to you. And they go out of the way almost to be kind. And it took a little bit of time to me to acclimate to that because I thought it was so weird because I grew up living in that bubble, like saying, okay, got to worry about my problems. Maybe if my friend has a problem, I can worry about that too. But it wasn't so much of my concern. But here it's like everyone, wants to see people do good and, so much kind. And they call it Southern hospitality, where it's just like different parts of, or different areas of, of this, like in the States, it's like you can get that. And then there's certain areas where it's just like you're to get a yelling, screaming person who's so caught up in their own life. What do you say to those people who are living in that bubble and who are so distracted by their own circumstance that they can't even see someone and say, hey, you look good today. Hey, I like your dress. Hey, you're looking sharp, right? You smell good. And I mean, it doesn't have to get weird or anything, but like they, they are just totally checked out.
Firstly, I think in many ways it's just fear. And what has happened is that we've had people who've recognized that if they put earphones or headphones on and they're on their phone or scrolling, then they don't need to actually acknowledge anyone else that's sitting next to them on the train or in an elevator. And that is very much more comfortable. A big challenge because we've got to encourage these people to step out of that comfortable bubble of saying, I don't have to be involved in anyone else's problem. But the best way that I think we can do that is by, at any opportunity, by being a role model and by being engaged and by being helpful and by being interested and bit by bit, those people around us, whether they're just on a train or in an elevator, start to see that there's another way to be. I used to have a friend. He actually lived in Texas, and he was the most extraordinary guy. His name was Doug. He would talk to anybody in any situation. He would just start a conversation with everybody. An elevator, on a train, and I was once with him in an elevator. We got into the elevator on the first floor. By the time we got to the 20th floor, he was going into business with the person in they'd struck up a conversation. They'd found, and he would literally talk to anybody and everybody he met. So my thought is that if we can, so he inspired me to be more chatty than I was, and I thought I was chatty. So, and we demonstrate to other people what is possible, then they will often start to do what we're doing because they think, hey, that's a good way to be.
How about busy people and happiness? Because I know some people get so caught up in being busy entrepreneurs. Sometimes like I'm busy growing my business and they don't look at the little things in life. Maybe I don't want to use the word, but I am going to use the word neglect their family. So they spend more time at work than they do with their family. Like they're just almost like so focused on a goal where, happiness almost takes a back burner. Are those individuals making a decision to not appreciate their family or to not be happy? Because I think they're thinking in a different way of I'm doing this for my family, even if they don't see it.
Yeah, and I think more and fathers will probably sometimes do that. Like they check out of their family, but they say, I'm doing it for the family. Very often it's actually also what they want to do because they're in an area where they feel more comfortable, and it's sometimes easier to stay at work and work late than try and deal with the difficult teenagers. It comes back a lot to deciding that, okay, I may be building a future, but I have to live life in the present. For many of us, we're even those of us that think we're doing okay, we're still postponing our happiness. Like we might have a dinner engagement and we're headed for the restaurant, but we're stuck in traffic and we're saying, well, I'm going to be happy when I get to the restaurant. But, right now we're cursing the traffic. And then we get to the restaurant and now there's a lineup because we're late. We say, well, I'll happy when I get a table. And we get the table and we look through the menu, we order our food. Now we're hungry. So I'm not happy yet, but I'm going to be happy when I get my meal. And then we take a photograph of our main course and send it out on Instagram. I'll be happy when someone responds and likes what I've ordered. And so it goes on. And we have to at some point say, I need to drag my awareness, my mind back to the present, because I can live my whole life like this. So right now, I need to be just enjoying my chat with Michael, and I need to not be thinking about, aware that there are things I'm looking forward to. But we can do that, and we also need to at some point make that decision. Then it becomes easier to enjoy the people that are with us and enjoy what we're doing at the moment. But it's a trap. We're always for thinking that the next moment is going to be better than this moment. The next moment is never better than this moment, especially if in the next moment we're thinking about the moment after that.
Very true. You brought up a good point, and you didn't use this word exactly, but the word comfort. It's like if you're stuck in traffic, you might think this is uncomfortable, right? Maybe you're just like, oh, I want to get out and walk around. Maybe you're on a long road trip, so it's uncomfortable. Maybe you're hungry, so you want to fill your belly. So we're looking for comfort, right? So we're not feeling hungry anymore. We're not feeling claustrophobic or being in the car. And I wanted to ask you this question. Is there a difference between being comfortable and being happy?
I would think so. That's a great question. I've never considered it. I've never been asked it, but I think there's happiness and joy in stretching ourselves and in anticipation and in planning for things that might be difficult. And so there is a certain amount of adrenaline, maybe not too much, but in anticipation of things that we're going to find challenging or exciting. And we're just allowing ourselves to be comfortable, whether it's just always having comfortable conversations or just staying in that comfortable zone at work, never dealing with difficult things that need to be fixed. That's not really leading us toward the most fulfilling and enriching life. So comfort is probably something we need to be careful of too much.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you have it. Do you have a lottery system where like people can win money?
We do.
So like the statistics are like, like if you win the lottery, like you're happy for like 6 to 9 months or something. And then it's kind of like now you're focused on all the problems, right? Maybe taxes, but your family, wanting money, all these people are wanting money. So then it's like almost at that point, it's like you feel like you didn't even want to win the money in the first place because you have all of these new array of problems. And typically when they lose it all, they feel happy again. It's like, didn't you want the money and things like that? This happened with Mike Tyson. He's a boxer. And
I know Mike.
Yeah. And he talked about this aspect where he was a fighter, like one of the best heavyweights there were. And, he was talking about how when he lost it all, he was happy because no one can take anything from him anymore because that's what they wanted for him. So he felt like everyone just wants something from me. Everyone just wants to be around me because I have money. They didn't truly ask who he was or if he was okay. It was kind of like, like, oh, you have all this money, you should be okay, where people were just making assumptions rather than truly understanding and inquiring what is going on with an individual. And many people, they don't even do this. And even in relationships, they don't do it on a consistent manner, which they should, asking their partner like, hey, like, is everything good? Let's check in. Let's have a conversation. My wife and I, for example, we have monthly life coaching sessions. And it's not like we need to go see a life coach or anything. Like we don't have like relationship problems, but we just check in. We just ask questions, right? They could be stupid questions too. It's like there's, an hour and a half of just like, hey, let's see. We talk about work. We could talk about friends. We could talk about family. We could talk about anything. Like there's no set criteria for our conversation. It's an opportunity for us to be open, to talk about anything that might have been concerning us. Maybe they're spending a little bit too much time, away from the kids or something. And we just bring up these little concerns, and it helps bring more awareness to us because, life can be very busy. You just kind of are just like, a stop and go sometimes. You're like, okay, I got to do this. I got to do that. And especially, for her, she's in school, and then she has, her career, got the kids. And then for me, got the businesses. And it's like, where do we meet? So, at some point, we have created these intersections where we can stop and slow down, so it's a 4-way stop and everyone's stopping like, all right, let's see who needs to go. Let's see what needs to happen versus, we're on the highway and we're just kind of cruising 80 miles an hour. We're just kind of looking at everything flash by, and that's life sometimes. And then we hope, maybe at 65, in we, not meaning my wife and I, but like in general, we as people think at 65, that's when we can truly be happy, right? That's the American dream, essentially, where it's like at 65, after you have worked your whole life, now you can finally settle down. You can finally be happy, right? You can travel the world. You don't have to worry about money, hopefully. And, they say that within 10 years of people retiring, they pass away because there's no level of purpose in their life anymore, because typically they tied their identity with their career. And then later on, they might do some traveling, things like that. It might be fun. But then again, now they're worried about, am I going to have money if I live to 100? So now they're filled with so much worry of all the things that could happen that they stop living the life that they wanted to have, and they waited all the way until they're 65. What is that phenomena that we are waiting for a later date to live life?
It's this crazy human idea that we have that maybe life is going to get easy or better in the future, and so I'll do all this stuff now and I'll be successful now, and I'll postpone my happiness. So you brought up a whole lot of great things there, Michael. Well, one thing I want to go back to is the Mike Tyson thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that we need to be comfortable with what we have or we lose it. So whether it's that we have a good job that we've earned that we don't think we deserve, or whether we've inherited money that we might not think we deserved, or in Mike Tyson's case, I heard a figure of $600 million that disappeared. And I know it was a lot, but if you grew up where Mike did, you can't help but feel that I don't deserve to have all this money. And if you don't have it, then your subconscious will help you to get rid of it. So for all of us, there's a lesson there that we need to become comfortable with what we have and what we want to keep. That is why most lottery winners lose what they have. With respect to people who retire and plan to be happy, and then life just sort of ends before too long. The reason I'm on this podcast is I turned 67 last Monday. And a lot of people say to me, you've sold enough books, you don't need to do anything else. I believe that the more that I can be connected with you and our listeners, the more that I can be sharing something that might be useful, the more that I feel that I'm a part of this world and still contributing, and will hopefully bring some happiness to our listeners, and know that that will bring some happiness to me. So I will never retire. Maybe that I don't have a formal job, but I believe that it is critical that we maintain a connection and a mission to make other people's lives better. We've all come across people who retire. Suddenly they take 10 minutes to tell us a story that a year ago they would have told us in 1 minute. just because everything just gets sort of slowed down, and they perhaps don't have, the excitement or the challenges. And what happens when we have less of a mission, very often the people that we cherished and cared about drop away because, frankly, and this is brutal, but people find us a little boring and less relevant. And then we wonder, how come no one calls me anymore? How come no one drops by for coffee anymore? So I believe that connection to the outside world and being on some kind of a mission is critical until the last day.
Yeah, there's so many aspects of that last point. Proximity, for example, if you live next to your grandma, you're going to probably see her a lot more, or grandpa, whoever. But like if they live 10 minutes away, is like it's a burden now, right? So like even that short of a distance, it's a burden, right? Let alone if you live 1,000 miles away. Yeah, sure, you can get on the phone and things like that, but at some point you're just going to be so bogged down. And as we said early on in the beginning of the podcast, it's like we all have our own problems, we all have our own life. And it's not until someone passes away or something negative happens that we are paying attention, right? Because I can't tell you how many people, they go to funerals or someone passes away, they go, oh my goodness, like, I wish I talked to them more, like I wish I called them. And there's all of these regrets of the things that can no longer happen. We have an opportunity to pick up our phone and call our parents and say that we love them, and to, to rekindle those fires and those relationships that we once had. But many people, they just kind of allow them to, deteriorate. And I'm not saying that you need to keep all of your relationships, but which ones would you be upset if you were dying, if you were on your deathbed, and that they didn't stop by, and that they didn't, just, see how you're doing? And I mean, this is, personal, I guess you can say, because maybe you're a person who's like, well, as long as I have my dog and my cat, I'll be good. And it's almost like we have become desensitized as people. Many people think that we don't need each other because they can go to the grocery store, they can get the food that they need. They don't have to talk to the farmers. They don't have to talk to the truckers who bring the food to the grocery store. And they feel as if they traded their hours for a paycheck, that they were the people who have acquired that. And they don't necessarily see all the hands and all the people that were necessary for that to be in their life. The home that you have been living in, maybe you built it, right? Maybe you're a carpenter, but there's a good possibility that you hired a builder to do that, right? They were a part of your life at some point. So there's people who are coming in and out of your life frequently. And it's difficult for us to say, well, I'm going to stay connected to everyone who has been in and out of my life. How would someone understand and know that that person should be like a long-term aspect to your life?
A couple of things come to mind, Michael. Number one is that we can make a list, and a friend of mine, Richard, did this. He made a list of all the people, other than just having some vague kind of idea of these people matter to me. He made a list of all the people that were critical to him, and he made a point of being in touch with them at least once a month. We've got another buddy in San Diego, Jimmy, and he has maybe 100 people he calls on their birthday without fail. He has called me on my birthday. He was a reader who one of my books, and then he won a holiday to Australia and came and visited me, and we've been in touch ever since. He has called me on my birthday every year for the last 30 years. So sometimes it takes a commitment to a list, almost a project, that we say, this is what I do, and these are the people that I either contact once a month, for example, on my birthday. And here's another thing that I've found a wonderful thing. Whenever my wife Julie and I have a lunch or a dinner with anybody, we make a point of making a little speech. It might only be 2 sentences. It might be, we are so blessed to have you as neighbours. And we're so looking forward to getting to know you better as you've just moved in here. But we're thrilled that you've come to our place for lunch today. And thank you, which was from a little speech. We had neighbours come to lunch on the weekend. Or that we so often will be together in groups or in families. And the idea is that it should be some kind of celebration, but nobody says anything about how they feel. And it just becomes like 1,000 other togethers in a home or a restaurant. What we can do is make a point of saying some heartfelt words. It doesn't have to be like a speech. You just bang a glass and everybody stops talking and you just say, listen, we love you all and we're so thrilled that you joined us today. And thank you for being part of our lives. And people go away and they think, okay, we're precious.
I love that aspect, and to incorporate that into just a simple luncheon with neighbors or friends. I was thinking also how, like they say, you are the proponent of the 9 to 10 people you keep around you. So if you hang around 9 broke people, you'll be the 10th or something like that, they say. If you hang around 9 negative people, you're going to be negative also. But then we can even be more positive, right? We can say if you hang around 9 happy people, you'll be the 10th, right? Is there a magic number that would be appropriate for someone who is trying to get in a better state of mindset of being happy and to have the decision of being happy?
Not aware of an appropriate number, Michael. I do believe if we have that mission to uplift, that we look for good things. So we were talking about compliments earlier. In terms of relationships, this is something that I've discovered, and that is that when you take the time to understand the heartaches, the fears, and the troubles that almost anyone has been through, it'll break your heart. That every one of us challenged and troubled. I played tennis with a guy called Ted, and Ted seems like nothing worries him. You know, always making fun of people. People are always first to make fun of him because he seems like he's bulletproof. He's in real estate, so he's a pretty tough anyway. He said to me last year, he said, Andrew, there's not a day goes by that I don't worry that I've said the wrong thing or done the wrong thing. He said, my life is torture. Couldn't believe it. I thought this is the last person that I would have thought would be struggling. And what we might take from that is that the question is not why are some people sometimes difficult or troublesome or hard to get along with. The miracle is how some people even survive with what they struggle with and with what they go through. And if we can remember that even those people who seem to be bulletproof and happy all the time have serious challenges and worries, concerns, and we're less judgmental when they behave not as we would wish that they had behaved. We become likely to embrace them when angry or they say something hurtful. And our relationships improve, and relationships improve whether they're part of our family or whether they're people that we're working with and we found that they were just too difficult to get along with.
It's powerful. I know there's many people who will look at someone as a hero or invulnerable or, this figure that, is almost has a level of omnipotence to it. It's like, like nothing's going to affect this person. And they realize, once they get to know them that they're human too. And, the human condition and the human nature is that we're going to be happy. We're going to be sad some days. And hopefully you can, be in that happy state of mind. And you can make that decision to be happy more often than to choose to ruminate on something negative. But It's something that people, they have to acclimate to. And, it's easy for people to turn on their smartphones and to see all the negative news. And, naturally, we're hardwired to be negative because at one point in our life, it was a survival mechanism to keep us alive. If we heard something in the bush and we said, it could be a lion, it could be a snake, it could be something that's going to harm me. Yet today, we live a very safe life. We live a more comfortable life where we don't have to go in the fields and toll over, the farms and figure out where we're going to get our food tonight, or, if we're going to have a place to sleep, or, like are we going to have clothes? Are we going to be warm? Or, are we going to be temperate? As many of those worries have gone away. And we have replaced those worries with things that are almost ambiguous to, truly living a fulfilled life, because we're worried about what someone else is thinking about us. And that's causing us hardship. And, it's taking away our ability to be happy, because what could be, or what is right now versus, truly reflecting on, the moment, like asking someone like, hey, like, how are you? How are you is one of those simple greetings that we have lost meaning in. I could say, hey, Andrew, how are you? I'm good, right? And like, what does good truly mean? If we can truly dive deep into, what a person is and what a person is feeling, I think it's going to help us understand ourselves even more, because now we're going to be a bit more understanding of are we doing good, or how are you? And we check in more. And I believe that can create more opportunities for people to make that choice. As we said, happiness is, more readily. And our conversation today is definitely just the beginning for people to learn more about, what happiness is, what happiness can be for them. And, all of the books that you have written and all the workshops and keynote speeches and seminars that you do are going to just be another resource that people can dive into and slowly chip away at maybe the ice that has been around their mind or their heart that is stopping them from truly embracing a happy life, whatever that may mean for them, because happiness is going to be almost similar to success. You get to decide what success is for you, where you get to decide what happiness means for you. And happiness might mean that you're living in a cabin with your most cherished people and you are in communication with all the people you love. And when you go into town to get the food, you're saying thank you for this, because you understand it's not just you giving someone money, but you understanding that they had to work hard for those fruits and those vegetables and whatever you are getting from them. There's so much more to life than being independent and being individual. I found the people who are truly happy can embrace one another, can understand that this is not a fight that I'm fighting alone. I couldn't imagine going to war, for example, and doing it by myself. I have an army with me and everyone is a brother or sister. And in life, we are the same. We have become so segregated. We have become dilapidated almost as a society, where we dismantle someone else's feelings and emotions as irrelevant because ours are superior in a sense. So, this is all to say that you have some wonderful resources. All the books you have written over the years are going to be something that people can dive into and, use to enhance their life if they're feeling a sense of remorse or regret, or maybe even just the unease of unhappiness. What I would love for you, Andrew, is you to please tell the audience where they can find you, and then please give us a takeaway, any last words that the audience can take with them.
Sure. Thank you, Michael. Well, books are available on Amazon. So my first book, one of the best known, is Being Happy. Follow Your Heart is a book that I wrote about finding purpose and meaning in life and our career. My latest book is Bouncing Back, which is how we rebound from disappointment and disaster. All of the books are written in very simple language. They're all full of cartoons because I think pictures help us to remember the message. They are available on hard copy, put out by Amazon and delivered to your home, or they're in ebook. And Bouncing Back and Follow Your Heart are both audible. I have a website, andrewmatthews.com. It's all one word, Matthews with 2 T's, andrewmatthews.com. And sign up for my newsletter that I send out every 2 weeks, which is just a couple of sentences plus a cartoon, but a message that I believe you'll find helpful. No, I was writing Bouncing Back. I was wanting to distill what are three things that resilient people do, and we all need to find resilience when maybe we're not so happy or we're dealing with something that is tougher than we'd ever imagined, like a relationship breakup, or we're short of money, or we're hating our job or have no job. What are three things that resilient people do? Number one is resilient people accept where they are. There's a myth that says that if you don't accept you've got, then you're not stuck with it. The reverse is true. As soon as you accept this is not what I wanted, but this is where I am, that's when you can move forward. So acceptance is power. It's critical, and it's something that I talk about a lot in Bouncing Back. Next thing that resilient people do is that they just bite off big challenges one day at a time. All you can do is give your best until bedtime and let tomorrow take care of itself. And if you do that one day after another, you will get to a better place. And the third important thing to do to get to a better place is to see your life as better. We become what we think about. We don't become better, stronger, happier people by looking at who we are. We hold a picture of who we want to be. So we have a vision of a better life, how we're operating, how we're interacting, how we're working, where we're living, relationships, how we want them. And as we keep that picture in our mind, then we move toward the life that we dreamed about.
I love the last part, but then I would even just not even say the last part. I loved every bit of our conversation from the beginning, like the beginning, the middle, the end. It was just invigorating, and I'm excited for the release of the episode, of course, but I'm also excited to listen to this again and again, because when you have a podcast, I have found, and not just like a podcast that you have done, but like any podcast that you can listen to, you can listen to it not just once, just twice. It's like a conversation that you can keep on playing. And every single time you listen to this, especially this one, you're going to get something new. You're going to, especially if you're feeling a certain way, something's going to resonate with you a little bit more, maybe a little bit less here and there. And I always say, they say that if you are listening to music and you are in a depressed state of being, right, you have a negative mind or something like that, you're more likely to understand and feel the lyrics rather than just kind of listening to the song and hearing the music, because it's like you're driving down the road, you're focused on the road. If everything is good, the music is playing, and it's just kind of like a background noise. But when you're forced to pay attention, like, okay, man, like there's a lot going on, you can take so much more away. And I know if you just pay attention in this hour here with Andrew and myself, you're going to find so much to take away. You're going to have a full notebook of notes every single time. They're all going to be different. These things are going to be the things that are going to be the catalyst for you to make the change in your life. Because happiness is, again, something we all want. It's something we all vie for. It almost seems like not everyone's going to get it, but it is a probability and a possibility for everyone. And you have to believe it. And you have to make that choice today. So I do want to thank you, Andrew, for coming on, spending some time talking about happiness and resilience with us today. And I'm excited for this episode to not only air, but to keep on being shared and listened to, because it was so powerful today.
Michael, it's been my real pleasure. Thank you.